Welcome to the Content 10X Podcast, the show where content creators learn how to harness the power of content repurposing. And now, your host, Amy Woods.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Content 10X Podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, and this week I share with you a remarkable repurposing story. Now, you know how much I love content repurposing. I love sharing really interesting stories of repurposing, and in particular, I love the stories whereby the content took off in ways that perhaps were never even planned by the content creator. And that's exactly what I want to share with you in this week's podcast episode. And I really like this example because it shows that you can get really big things and achieve an awful lot from simple, humble beginnings. So you'll have to start somewhere, right? So I share what happened with a Twitter account. Yep, a Twitter account where content can only be shared in very bite-sized snippets. And this example actually dates back to when Twitter only allowed 140 characters of text. So it's now 280, but it was 140 for a long time when Twitter first started. So what can really be achieved in the world of content maximization and content repurposing from a tweet, from a selection of tweets? So let me tell you. So in December 2012, British journalist Rob Temple started a Twitter account called Very British Problems, and it's at the handle So Very British. And he drops all these really witty one-liners about us Brits. So I'm a Brit, as you can probably tell from my accent. And generally it's about our awkwardness, our politeness, all the silly things we say and do, our national quirks, stiff upper lips and all of that. And Rob has a really natural knack of identifying the peculiar cultural traits of us Brits. And it all started when apparently he went on his lunch break at work and he got his hair cut, and it was cut pretty short. And when he got back, his boss shouted, someone's had a haircut, and everyone looked up and it was very awkward and embarrassing. And it made him think about how that happens quite often, and maybe it's a very British thing to call someone out when they've had the haircut. So anyway, went back to his desk, and so this story goes, that's when he started this Very British Problems Twitter account, and he shares those everyday awkward occurrences. It's really funny, but being British, I guess, maybe I find it funny because of that, but I think people do find it funny all over the world. For example, he jokes about things like, when us Brits have a life-threatening catastrophe in front of us, we would probably describe it as a bit of a pickle, that kind of thing. And we also talk way too much about the weather. Now, his tweeting struck a chord, and within only a month of this Twitter account, he'd gained 100,000 followers, including various celebrities who were then liking and retweeting his tweets. And he went and landed a book deal. So in a very short amount of time, his Very British Problems Twitter account, he got approached by a publisher, and he had a book deal. But it didn't end there. That was just the beginning, in fact. So let me just share with you what happened from the Very British Problems Twitter account. So it didn't just become one book, it became 3 books. There's a clothing range, there's t-shirts and the like. There's a game, so there's a board game, and there's a travel cards game as well. There's mugs, there's calendars, there's greeting cards. Rob Temple, the creator, has a column in the Telegraph, a paper in the UK. Since 2017, he's been part of a weekly column on the Saturday section of the Telegraph newspaper for Very British Problems. There's also a TV show, and this is a main channel, a primetime channel in the UK, Very British Problems, with some big famous comedians on it like James Corden, and they reveal the habits and the quirks that set the Brits apart. But it's all based on Very British Problems Twitter account, and the creator, Rob Temple, is really involved in the TV show as well. So you think about it, we've got a Twitter account and a load of tweets that has become 3 books, a clothing range, games, mugs, calendars, greeting cards, a weekly newspaper column, and a TV show. So it's absolutely amazing what happened from a Twitter account. And there are some really key factors here that I want to point out. So firstly, his content was good, very witty and entertaining. He was putting out quality content. And next, it was consistent. So when he got started, he didn't stop, and he stayed really consistent, and he regularly tweeted. He stayed in his lane. He didn't get distracted with other ideas or the types of content. He knew what he was doing. He saw that it worked and he stuck with it. And then he was open to opportunities. He was able to see beyond the tweets, and he took opportunities, starting with the book and then everything else that came after as well. And I think they are just really important points. Quality, consistent content, staying in your lane and then being open to opportunities is sometimes all that it takes to really maximize the value of your content. I'd really recommend that you listen to episode 114 of the Content 10X podcast called The Content Repurposing Mindset, where I really dig into this concept of being able to see beyond your original content and be able to view your content in a different way so that you can really get the most value out of it. So really what I want you to take away from this short episode this week is that to be great at repurposing, it isn't always about creating epic pieces of content and then breaking it down. So it's not always about repurposing a live stream or a pre-recorded video or a podcast episode or an infographic or those kind of epic cornerstone pieces of content. Sometimes it's just about being consistent with one platform, staying in your lane, always putting out quality content. And as we can see, this can even happen from tweets, from the shortest of bite-sized content, but that can take off and then can become so much more. So I hope that you've enjoyed this week's podcast episode, and I really hope that I've inspired you with this story, that you just never know who is consuming your content and the opportunities that can be just around the corner. So all that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast episode. If you like the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe, and that will ensure that you don't miss any future episodes. And if you're new to the show, there's plenty more where this came from, so be sure to check out the past episodes as well. Now, if you don't have a copy yet of my book, then be sure to grab a copy. It's called Content 10X, More Content, Less Time, Maximum Results, and it really is the ultimate guide to repurposing every type of content. It's available in paperback, Kindle and audiobook. So just head to content10x.com/book or head over to Amazon or Audible. Also, please do follow me on social media. I'm really active over there at Content 10X on all of the platforms, and don't hesitate to get in touch if you're interested in our fully done for you content repurposing service. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode.